What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Texas Public Podcast. I am sitting here. It is late in the evening. It's about dinner time. Sitting here with Rudy while Penny's in the background cooking up some good supper. What's going on, dude?
What's up, everybody? What's up, Seth? How you doing, man?
I'm doing all right, man. It's I'm not sweating this evening, but that's only because I'm not hunting.
Yeah, it's been hot. It's been a hot season.
Yeah, man. It's wearing me out sometimes. Going in sweating, coming out sweating, but sometimes I kick myself. I need to be more like you, man, and be able to find better spots closer to the road. That's what I'm thinking.
Hey, dude, everybody always knocked me for walking so dang far, and you know what? As hot as it's been, I'm like, I ain't walking that far. I ain't even trying to hunt none of the good spots, man. I'm just been trying to stay as close as I can to the road, legal distances. You know how it goes.
Right. Well, it's not like you're doing that for those reasons. You've got good spots. You know, you're hunting the good spots, and those are definitely coming in handy right about now because it is hard to stay motivated when it's 85 degrees and you're headed to the stand. It's October 28th, 29th, or in the morning it's still 75. It's rough.
Man, I mean, I know you and I have had numerous talks about sweating out, like fully covered in sweat by the time we got to the setup. So.
Oh yeah, stinking too, bro. I've been so god awful nasty.
Oh yeah. Dude. I know them deer smell us.
Probably
40 yards away.
Scent control is not a thing. It's not even worth it.
Yeah, just gotta play the wind, man.
But with that said, yeah, I mean, with that said, as nasty as some of the days have been, it's been a kind of a wild first part of the season, dude.
It's been a lot of action for considering the temps. I mean, obviously, we're seeing a lot of deer. I've seen a lot of deer. I feel like it's considering the temps. We had one little front early bow season. And it just kind of petered out. And after that, it's been dry, to say the least. We haven't had any rain. And I think we forget that, especially right now. Because by the time you guys get this, we've had a little rain. But.
Yeah, no rain for like 6 weeks. Is rough as all the conditions sound when you lay them out on paper. I and you as well. I think some other people, it's actually been a pretty good October. I mean, I've had a good October. It's even just seeing deer in general, like thinking about years previous, it's probably one of the better Octobers, which is kind of odd.
And healthy deer, dude. Like, none of these little raggedy skin and bone looking deer running around right now.
Yeah, I mean, you and I were just talking about some pictures I sent you yesterday, just talking about how healthy that deer was looking. Yeah, younger buck, but man, he looked smooth, man. Rounded off muscles. He looked like he was doing fine.
Man, between the tracking, and just everything going on, it has been definitely a year of big deer. Even the does, like, ginormous fat, and like clean watching them get just tons of fat on them. I don't know about you, but yeah, I've been seeing that. So, but anyways, we gotta tell me about how your hunts. I mean, we've got a lot to cover here, and I think that seeing the fact that you've had so much action, let's talk about that. I mean, I think that's why people listen to us, right? So let's figure out what did you do, and not where you've been hunting, but how have you been hunting and approaching this early season and getting yourself into some of these deer this way? I mean, and you've got some amazing footage already.
Except the footage except the footage I should have got, But no, man, I mean, yeah, you and I have been talking a lot about what we've been working this year versus last year, or what seems to be the most consistent, and a lot of the same kind of stuff comes up, and this year is a little bit different for me. I was kind of thinking I was going to have to rely on, a lot of historical knowledge. I've kind of been a big scrape person for the most part, because I know some early season spots where scrapes pop up like literally in September, and it's just there's some early season does, and I try to build that bank of details, but those spots have not been working out, man. The pre-rut activity seems to be 10 or 12 days behind this year. Normally, even talking to other guys, good hunters, people aren't seeing the bucks on scrapes, seeing the mature bucks even poking out right at daylight very much at all this year, including myself. So it's like, well, what are you gonna do? You gotta kind of pivot. I'm kind of like you. I try to have spots geared towards a lot of different situations, a lot of different types of rules of thumb. All of the early season factors, and I mean, you and I have been talking. We kind of came up with 3 or 4 like primary tactics, and some of them are fairly common, consistent across the board. But there's some specific details to the areas we hunt.
Absolutely. I think in those details, I feel people overlook. Some people overthink, but a lot of people overlook. And that's a big part of the difference between how you're successful and how you end up being skunked for 2 years straight, never seeing a deer up there. But you said something. I'm gonna back up a little bit. You were talking about you're a big scrape hunter, and you've taught me something. I've never made a mock scrape in my life, and the first time we ever scouted together on a piece of public land, we set up a mock scrape in an area we both felt that bucks would be crossing through there. There was rub lines, there was good bedding food, transitions. A bunch of transitions came together, and it was just off a bottom, so it had some ridge, and then I remember I asked you something that day, why, what makes you pick this spot? And the only reason I'm covering this is because I know you still hunt scrapes because you've been sending me pictures of deer on scrapes. And I don't know if those are scrapes that you made or those historical scrapes that you know of, that you just licking branches that are going to have scrapes under them come pre-rut and rut, or let's just elaborate a little bit more on that.
Yeah, as far as those go, yeah, I mean it's kind of a mixed bag. Some are scrapes that I have established. It might be 50-50, but a good chunk of them are. But it hasn't been a whole lot very effective this year. But usually some of them are scrapes that I have established, but it's usually in relation to other scrapes or other social areas, but really the ones that work best are based on location, and that's those primary like bedding areas next to security cover where bucks are. They would lay down scrapes to indicate to the does for the does to use. Right, they're not just the little basketball scrapes you see out in an open bottom where you can see 200 yards. That's nighttime stuff. Those aren't going to do well for you, right? Yeah, and when we did that scout, we saw a couple of nice bucks on there like pretty quick, but then it never really took, and that was a good example.
It never really took off. It's like they brought them there. Even though that was a emerging area and there was a lot of deer activity in there, poop, scrapes, or not even scrapes, rubs, feed. There was oak trees all in there and water. Just a lot of diversity, I think. That's why. But, I mean, you told me something that day again, too, and I've repeatedly said this quite a few times to people now because I think it's a really good, quick, easy. The rule of 3, there's got to be 3 reasons for you to set it up or set a camera or want to hunt it. So I've kind of been living by that too, even though I think I've done that without thinking it that way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, true. Yeah, and you like to think you do that, but sometimes I have to remind myself not to get too excited about like one aspect of the situation, or the sign that I'm seeing, and be like, hey, why else would I want to be here? Because one reason typically not really good enough. There's got to be some other factor here that starts stacking the odds up. And it's like just kind of a hard reminder to remind yourself to think through it. Sometimes is a good rule of thumb for me because I won't do that. I'll just get excited about one particular thing and be like, oh, this is good enough. Well, good enough don't get you on deer. So with that said, you and I were talking a little earlier. All of this that we're talking about, you hit on it. We talked about some things the early season that's not working for me this year. You talked about when we went scouting. So, scouting, dude, when it comes to early season hunting, I mean, scouting is king, right? I mean, how many times we message each other, scout hunt, videos back on the YouTube channel, kind of preach that, especially in these woods, man. If you're not on the active sign, if you're not scouting constantly, even scouting your way in, scouting your way out, when you're entering and leaving hunts, that has been absolutely the single most important aspect that keeps me in the game. I mean,
And you're telling their secret. No, I'm just kidding. No, you're right. I'm not cutting you off. I'm sorry, but I think that when you're talking about scouting, and you said something just a second ago, I'm going to elaborate on before we get too carried away. You're scouting your way in, and you're scouting your way out. You may run into 3 new scrapes on a trail coming into your spot that weren't there 2 days ago or last weekend. And maybe one of those scrapes actually has fresh pea and tracks in it, and where he just hit it, but the other 2 aren't hit. Well, I mean, that tells me that buck was there that night or that morning already. I've been in times where the scrape had pea steaming out of it, But
and
you can't overlook scouting. I mean, you've got to scout. I mean, your early season scouting, the scouting that you sweated your butt off, getting that swamp booty out there in the summer and the spring, coming into the fall. You did all that hard work, and you did it. And even though you don't think, in that little bit of time, from if you're a bow hunter, your first sit in there is the most crucial sit. You don't have many sits in a good spot before they know that it's being burned up by pressure.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other aspect of scouting is not just like putting in the preseason scouting, the summer scouting. I get, people have their preferences on what you're going to do, but to me, the scouting thing is the mindset. It's not something that you do at a certain amount of time. It's a thing that you force yourself to do when you have to admit that you're not in the game, right? It's like this year I said I was going to sit. I needed to focus on. I was going to utilize my historical knowledge. I felt like I had a good enough bank. I'm working a different type of job now. My kids are super busy. I was like, man, I'm gonna just rely. I've got good historical spots. All I got to be there is the right time, right? And I'm telling you how I'm excited these spots are, and I'm going to them, and I'm not seeing the deer, dude. But I'm so confident in them that I went, a couple of times. Then I finally told myself, like, hey, what are you doing? You cannot continue to do this. Like, as much as you love this spot, the last couple of years I'm talking to you about this, especially this particular spot where I see these just big deer that come through every year. I had to bail. And I was like, dude, it's not working, man. Like, I have to swallow the pride, like swallow the moment of like, no, this is what you banked on. Well, dude, it ain't working. So I got up early out of the morning hunt, and I went and scouted the other side of the piece, some pieces that I haven't been to before. And I scouted my way out, or scouted it, and then scouted my way out. Went back in and like a next day or two, kind of scouted again. And what did I tell you, dude? When I walked out yesterday, there were no scrapes on this trail. When I went back in 24 hours later, there was 3 scrapes. The activity had obviously shifted. I went in there and hunted the next day, and I saw a buck, just like that.
That fast.
Just the first time I went in.
Just adjusting a few hundred yards.
The same,
in another direction.
yes, the same block of property. I was probably 350, 400 yards other side of the piece. Saw a daylight buck.
That's not that far. That's really, knowing a deer's travel, especially since I track a lot, that's nothing.
Yeah.
That's nothing.
But it sucked, man.
I
was like,
why they shifted? Did you figure out what the shift was, or why they may have shifted over there? Was there something that stopped on that side as to 400 yards there was more of, or did you ever figure that out yet? Or
the spot that I shifted to is an area that I've always assumed that they do frequent and travel through, but the access isn't great. Because I gotta circle the property, and like if the wind's blowing out of south, I'm just blowing my scent across the across the
Oh,
property.
I've been there.
Yeah, and it's not an exact. I didn't have it pinpointed exactly, but I'm like, well, all the activity's over here. I'm good. It don't get any better than where I'm at until it's not, right? So I shifted over there where I think some of the deer come from, and it's just a couple of pinch points, super thick briar stuff, and then jacked up as high as I could get in that tree.
Now,
And
do you think that they were in there because the briar, the green briar, was in there, and they were eating that more than there weren't any oaks, or not dropping yet, or?
they were on that side because I think a couple of different reasons. It's a little closer to a water source that I know of.
It's been hot and it's been dry.
Also, as hot as it is, there's a pine beetle kill on that side, and there's different type of pine forest over there that casts a big shadow over this big swath of greenbrier patch, and where it stays more shaded, it's more green.
Yep.
And then
And
other
that
parts of
moisture
the
stays there,
yeah,
which keeps it cool.
and other parts of the greenbrier, when you look across it, you can tell it's dried up.
Makes sense.
So when and then now where they're kind of getting in that phase where they're moving a little more, I think that's why I saw him. But
But dude, see, like, God, that just little piece right there can help so many people be successful
yeah,
out there.
but you got to be willing to move, man. And it's actually I'm just as guilty as somebody else as being stuck in my way or stuck in a spot. But I had to force myself to do that, and I was like, dude, it's hot. I don't want to go scout over here. It's probably not going to be nothing. I've been back there before, but I've never dove in, and I'm just like, I had to do something. I had to make a move, and it worked out. I mean, I think the same thing has been happening for you this year. I mean, you're sort of scouting and slipping at the same time, during the
Well,
prime hours.
so I had a couple hunts where we, like I told, jog right here by my house. I have a lot of public right by my house, and there's trails, and I like to go jogging and stuff. Well, I found a piece when we were jogging. A big thing, like I said, we talked about in the last podcast, is if you see a deer jump or run, especially if you're hiking into your spot, mark it, and then don't forget to come back if you ever, just go scout where you saw that deer, see where they were coming from or going to.
That's right.
And a lot of times you can capitalize on that because they'll take you right to the food source or the water source or the bedding area, and you're like, deer right here. I ain't even got to walk all the way back here. And I promise you, that buck back there is probably chasing the same does up there as they are in the back, or vice versa. But what happened is with all the south winds, and I know the spots that I have, like I don't want to burn them, and I've been waiting for right now at this time of the year, but I have yet to still go in there because of the wind situation. We haven't had a front, and a good one, and it's not normal for us to have a good front by now. We're in 80-degree weather, and it's been hard, and we've had a lot of southwest, southeast wind, a lot of southeast, east winds at first, and now we're starting to get that west, southwest shift that you normally get, normally mid-late October, and that shifts into the northwest winds and north winds, right, with the fronts.
Yeah.
And I can tell you that as a fisherman because I love fishing on the coast, and when that southwest wind starts smashing, that means reds are running. Well, at least that's from my experiences out there on the bay at this time of year.
Yeah.
But anyways, so what I've been doing is marking those areas in my mind mentally, and then I just boots on the ground pre-season, finding some cuts, finding some clear cuts or some brushed out areas where they got rid of the undergrowth, and then it's going to come back. It brings a lot of green vegetation. They typically do this around some of the equestrian trails and hiking trails, things like that. Not saying that you could hunt there, you have to, because specifically you got to be within a certain perimeter of these areas. But knowing how watching deer and then how they use terrain to travel, right?
That's right.
And I liked going into, so let's just say I found a deer, I jumped them, I marked it, and then I came in there and I was hunting this one spot, and I didn't see any deer, but I saw some pigs, and I'm like, I need to make an adjustment. I need to go for a walk. Well, I hit their trail. This was that morning. I got down at like 10:30, 11 o'clock, and I hit their trail, and I just started following it. And it took me across the equestrian trail, and then I followed it, went down to an SMZ. That SMZ led me to a four-way junction. At that four-way junction was a little young pine sapling patch, like of about 15, 20 trees and just a little cluster. And it just cast a really good shadow, but there was a lot of pine needles on the ground right there. And the ground was just a little damper than everywhere else. And it was really, really cool. And you can tell that just by putting your foot, your hand on the pine needles and just pushing down. You can feel the difference. You step out of that 15 yards and it was a 10-degree difference right there alone. And there was tall grass right there. You can see beds where they were matted down in circular form. And I marked that bedding area. Well, then I continued following that trail. Well, guess what? It came out in one of those little clear cuts where the 90 was. And then if I followed it, it went down to the SMZ, which led back up to another part of an equestrian trail. And then they had 3 or 4 trails that crossed right there across into a big thicket. I mean, and I'm like, look, if I was pressured and I was a buck, I wouldn't even be out here. This is where I would go. Right. Mm-hmm. But I figured you can catch those bucks coming late from being out there going into there using that direct line of travel. Now, they would probably check that doe bedding before they went into that thicket. And I had that feeling, right? Well, let's fast forward. I go in a couple days later. I usually, when I scout, I give it about 3 or 4 days to kind of simmer down from me just burning through it. But those deer are used to people already being in there, right? Mm-hmm. So it's just a matter of, like, how much damage did you do? Like, I'm not spending 30 minutes in there. I'm literally assessing the situation. I'm marking my junction. I'm marking the trail. I literally color coordinate my deer trails and then my walk-in trails. My deer trails are yellow, and my walk-in trails I highlight as pink. Pink means danger, right? So bright, pink, red, whatever you want to call it. I just use pink just because it's bright. And I mark my trails, and I'm going to tell you why. Because sometimes I have to cross where the deer come in, and I want to be able to know, hey, the deer are going to cross at that point right there, and I've got to be able to shoot them before they get out or to it or after it, right? Especially if it's a buck. They usually smell you and either burn or they skedaddle on pretty quick. They don't like sticking around danger too long. Yeah. Unless they're chasing the girls. But anyways, this is early season.
But I'll say that's a great tip right there. Is I think people underestimate. They don't pay attention to the fact that what trails they crossed when they got in. I know sometimes you're in there for the first time, but when I try to go in, if I know I crossed the trail, I'm 100% conscious of where that spot is, and I know if a deer's coming in, I've got that spot marked, and I need to shoot that deer before it hits that exact spot, because they will catch it. You know what I'm saying?
Mature deer.
That's right. Anyway, sorry.
No, you're good. So I think one day we had a southeast wind that morning, and I told Penny, I said, hey, look, I'm going to go hit that spot where I just scouted a couple days ago. Where in that corner, I said there's some live oaks in there, and there's a couple of them dropping. And I said I saw a bunch of deer poop right there. I'm just gonna try to get up high as I can and set up. Right? Okay. So I get down there and I break off the trail and I start cruising down, and the transition line where the thick meets the clear cut, basically. I'm understanding that they mulched it. That's what they did. They didn't clear cut. They mulched it all out, so it looks real open and pretty in there, and a bunch of young beauty berries and briars and real green stuff starting to pop up in there. Well, as I'm walking in, I do use a headlight, especially when I'm trying to pick my freaking tree.
Yeah.
So I didn't have a tree pick because I never thought about hunting right there, just to get in and get really high just to see. I didn't plan on killing anything, right? I just wanted to have an observatory sit. Yep. And I just wanted to get the plan together. Well, as I break off I'm like, all right, I know I'm close to where I need to be because I'm looking at my phone, right? And uh, we end up I end up looking up, and there it was. It was a buck standing about 60 yards from me to my right, feeding underneath one of those oak trees. And a couple of does, and I just turned my light off, and I could hear them ease away. And I literally, when I turned my light off, I realized I was really close to an oak tree that I can jump in. Well, it wasn't that big of an oak tree, and the problem was I could only go about 13 foot up the tree before I hit that first large limb that I couldn't do anything about.
Mm-hmm.
And so I basically said, I'm not getting out of it. I'm already here. I'm just going to go ahead and set up. So I set up all the camera gear. I strapped myself in and everything. And that morning, they never blew. They never blew out. They never ran. I never heard them run or anything like that. That morning, I'm sitting there, and about 8:30, 9 o'clock, I think is when I texted you. I said, hey, I got deer. And I sent you a picture of me filming the deer feeding. Well, I think that deer was actually with those other deer, and it never left. It bedded down over there, and I just never saw it until it stood up and started feeding around. And sure enough, that deer fed for about 30, 45 minutes. And as I'm watching it, it lays down. And I said, I just put a deer to bed. I don't know how I'm going to get out of this tree. So I text Penny the same thing. Like, it gets later in the morning. I don't want to scare it off because I don't want it to know that I'm here. And not even 30 minutes later, it's about 10 o'clock. I'm sitting there looking down a cut that they did, and I could see that SMZ through it. This has got a little old logging road that cuts through it, and there's a couple red oaks down in there, and I just see a deer run across, and I'm like, oh, that must be the doe coming back for that little deer. It was a little nubbin buck, and he still had spots on his back end. But he had red fur already growing over the front end of it. And I said, man, so I see this doe burn across, and I'm like, man, there's a deer. And I start rolling the camera, and then you'll see in the video, then another deer comes across. And I'm like, dang, there's another one. Well, I'm sitting there for a second, and I said, I wonder if I can grunt it out. And I just did a real light grunt on the call, and it was just contact grunts, nothing dramatic. It was just a little meat, on the grunt call, and it was soft, and I blew it into my arm. I was trying to muffle it, and it wasn't even 3 minutes later, and a buck comes out, and he literally steps out. Of course, my heart starts racing, and I get the camera on him, and I'm trying to get a good shot of him coming out. He's lip curling. He's trying to smell. He's looking around. He was real, cautious. He wasn't moving with intention, like a mature buck would. So I zoom in, and I realized, I thought it was a big cow horn spike at first, but it turned out it was a big 4-point, and I watched him come all the way down to me, and he took a left, and he works on me. I even did a practice draw with my bow and settled on him as he was coming through, and then I let down.
It's a good idea.
Yeah, just getting used to it, getting ready for the moment, and it worked textbook style. I mean, just a quick scout and an adjustment, and it's funny because after that, they ended up getting horse riders come through 10 minutes later and scared them all back past me, all the deer, and they left to the thick stuff on the other side. And I said, well, if that's where they want to be, that's where I'm going to scout next. And I did that spot next. I scouted it, and I found I sent you all the pictures. Really heavily used trail, fresh poop everywhere, fresh feed trees, and I found a shed even on the trail. Now,
so let me ask you, as far as that goes. We talked about the scouting and you kind of laying out that scenario. How important is it? Because a couple of questions that come to my head is, how important is it to either be on the food or understand where the food is at this time of year versus just like a general trail or hunting in between them, or like a transition. I mean, how much stock do you put on the food in the early season?
I think the transition line is more effective during the peak rut because them does are running in transition lines and then bucks are running them up and down.
Right.
And theoretically, right? Because the buck's going to try to push a doe in an area where he can keep her. But then does like feeding on them heavy transitions, I noticed. But the main thing I've noticed all my years hunting out there is just knowing where the food source is. There are times that you can get away with hunting the food source. And I can tell you right now, 90% of our hunters' mistakes are hunting the food source spot in the morning. And they're putting deer out there because they're already there at night feeding, bedding underneath those trees, getting up and eating again, and then they ease off to the bedding areas.
Yeah.
They don't necessarily leave it, and they stay close. And I feel like a lot of people mess up. And that's why game cameras are so effective, because you can know, hey, those deer are there. They're not there first thing in the morning. They're not there all night. I don't have pictures all night over here. That tells you they're bedded close to there if they're feeding all night. You see it on feeders all the time. Deer bedding real close to feeders at night. They're eating there all night, and then they're progressing off of that and moving to either another food source or bedding area, and then they'll get up again and go from that bedding area back to the food source.
Yeah. Yeah, that's always one of the big questions, right? I think that's why a lot of people argue back and forth about hunting mornings in the early season, because you want to hunt either close to bedding or close to food, or if both stack up, then you're in the game, right? But it's like you're pushing in the morning, and on a food source, you're just walking in right on top of the deer, right? Because they're there at midnight, they're there at 3, they're there at 4:30 when you're trying to push in. And you're just pushing those deer out, and it's not easy. It's easy to talk about, but it's not easy to decipher a lot of the times, right? And like you said, trail cameras do play a big part of that. But all in all, I mean, you've got to find what scenario is going to work for that access, that timing, or if you're or whatever intel you have. If you're going to hang cameras, work off the intel, and you're confident like that is the tree or the area. I mean, that's why it's hunting, right? I mean, you're not going to be right 90% of the time.
That's why you got to have a bunch of them,
Exactly.
A bunch of spots. It's not one spot. I don't have a spot. Like, no spot is my spot, first of all, right? And that's funny because the way I say it, I don't have one spot. And I can tell you right now, this year alone, I have yet that I hunt normally.
Yep.
They've all been new spots from last year. Everything as far as where I'm recording, you're not going to see anything repetitive that you've ever seen before because it's all new.
Yeah, that's a good point. And it's been a lot of the same for me this year as well, where I've had my best interactions, my best shots have been in places that I have not released arrows before, or filmed deer in general. They're not in the spots where I thought I would have my encounters at this point in the season.
Right.
So we've got the scouting.
Thing is knowing where the food source is, knowing the deer trails, knowing where you cross deer trails if you have to. Don't do it if you don't have to. But if you do it, know where you did, so you got a shot on that trail.
Yep, exactly.
Right.
I've become very big on that. When I go into a spot, I'm super cautious about. I try to have an idea of where I want to be, hopefully even down to the tree. Sometimes not, but I have a general area like, hey, this 45-degree cone from here out to 50 yards. I'm not walking over there. I need to find a tree on this side. I'm not gonna wander. I need to find something over here because I do not want to cross trails going that way.
No matter how bad you need the discipline to do that. It's so hard.
Yeah.
So hard. But you'll realize if you take that piece of advice we're giving you guys, you will see a lot more deer.
Yep. So as far as the food, I mean, what have you seen them hitting this year? Has it been pretty typical? And I mean, and one question I got for you is like, we know how important the food is, but what does that good feed sign look like? I've heard a lot of people describe it, and I haven't really seen exactly the way people describe it. And I say this because I don't like to exaggerate things for people, because people kind of exaggerate good things, and then when people go out and look for it and they don't see it, you get discouraged. You're like, well, why don't I see that?
So my favorite thing people say are like, man, oh, you say go find the acorns. Well, I'm in the acorns. And I'm like, but are you in the spot they want to be in? And the biggest thing is, you've said it before. As a matter of fact, I just tracked a deer for a guy named Richard Gatlin, I think. Sorry, I'm just giving him a shout out because he can attest to this. He said this is a newer hunter. He was actually at our meet and greet. He shot a doe. That's how I got the privilege to go track for him. And but he was like, man, I just admire, what y'all are doing and trying to help us. And like, I still don't think I even know what a feed tree is. And I'm like, well, I'll tell you this, buddy. I'm here now, and if the dog happens to run by one, I will show you what a feed tree looks like. And I kid you not, man, this deer ran right by a feed tree, and it was hammered. And I'm talking, Seth, this was one of those spots you're like, oh my God, I need to get in here.
Yeah.
Sucks tracking for people sometimes because you see some amazing things that you really, really want to hunt, but you never go back because that's just the right thing to do. You don't burn someone's spot. But anyways, basically the tree was dropping big giant oaks, and you can see, like, if you look at the ground and it's all the same, right? Like everything's just laid out on top of each other. There's like, you can't even really tell nothing's walking through there. Like there's no indentions, there's no tracks. It's just flat pine needle or oak leaves, right? Or leaves in general because it's fall right now. But that feed tree you can see bare dirt, you can see tracks, you can see old poop, you can see new poop. There was a rug close by marking it. There was a scrape right there. There was just cracked acorn caps. Just the cap by itself with V notches, and then sometimes people think they crush them out of the shell. Nah, they grind that whole shell up and they eat it. They just spit out the cap. But I mean, there's times I've seen deer that were smart enough to crack the cap and then crack the shell, and you can hear them spit it. I'm spitting the cap, the hard stuff they didn't like, But it was just everything and all of that in one area. I mean, not that you need a scrape or a rub to say it's a feed tree, but first of all, if it's dropping and they're spending time there, they're going to have poop there. They're going to be pooping off you. There's going to be old poop's going to tell you they were there before. New poop's going to tell you they're there now. I mean, so that tells you that they're wanting to be in that area. Not to mention the trails that came into that tree, and not pig trails, deer trails. They were just beat down. They were tracks on tracks coming into there. So I think those things are obvious. I think when you see it, you can't miss it. And guys, be looking at our YouTube channel, because we've got episodes out there with real feed tree sign. Like, I've got some good video that I'm about to be putting out soon with Seth that's got this stuff that you can see it. Like, oh wow, that's evident. Like, there's old poop, new poop, cracked caps, acorns still dropping. That's signs that there's a lot of deer there.
Yeah. So could you see like what people would refer to as like the drip line from the canopy?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, dude. Hold on. Dude, my wife's walking in and out of here, slamming the door, letting the dogs out, and I'm trying to tell her, like, people don't want to hear that shit. Like, they hear the dryer, they hear the door slamming, the dogs are in here scratching around. I'm like, woman, like, nobody wants to hear a bunch of rustling. It's, like, distracting. Like, okay, I'm sorry. I had to stop and refocus. Okay.
So the drip line, it's very evident. I mean, when a tree grows out, you can see it spreads out so far, and the acorns drop out to a certain perimeter, right? And that's what I mean by when you look at the ground, everything looks the same, and then all of a sudden you're going to see an area that's just battered down. if there's pigs in the area, it's going to be rooted up all in this circle area. You can tell because the pigs are in there eating all around it. Now, don't sit on that tree because I'm not going to say the deer won't come there, but if the pigs are there tearing it up, they're going to pick another one just as good, not too far away.
Yep, I was going to say the same thing. People talk about, oh man, it looks like a tiller went through it. The only time I see that is when it's hogs, and I'm not sitting on that.
That's right. Yeah, you don't. I mean, if you want to kill pigs all day long, but
yeah,
not for a deer because I've had feed trees and I have feed trees where they're in bottoms, mostly in their water oaks, that the pigs will eat under and the deer will eat under, and they'll simultaneously. But sometimes, like when the pigs get real bad, I'll have to shoot one to get them out of there for a little while because the deer will be off for a few days and the pigs will be there, and I'll go shoot a pig, and then bam, the deer show back up. And the pigs don't come around for a little while. But anyways, you'll see where the acorn line drops around that tree and how everything's just tilled up. As a matter of fact, one of my cameras right now is on a white oak tree, and you can see it. And I can't wait to go in there and change the batteries because I'm going to get some fresh pictures and just post them because I think that's what people need to see. It's just normal. You see the drip line around the tree, and it's just tilled up. Cracked caps. You see tracks on tracks. All the deer trails will come to it. And then you just got to figure out where they're going, where they're going to.
So I'll say the two best areas that I've seen for a feed sign as far as a feed tree this year was the one that I found right before season started. I kind of posted that little short, the What Would You Do short. That was before season started, and it actually had a scrape there. It had a fresh rub there, and it was feed sign all around. And it wasn't, and something you could also be mistaken for is you find a lot of acorns, maybe they're young acorns, and you're like, man, even they're like cracked and they're kind of busted up. But if you stand there, you don't hear any dropping for like 10 minutes. The squirrels are knocking those out, right? And they may not be, just because there's a lot of acorns on the ground and some of them are cracked, doesn't mean that's the spot. Like a lot of acorns doesn't always mean that's where the deer are, right? There's other signs. Like you said, there's poop. Now, I will say, I don't always find a lot of, maybe I just haven't found like super intense feed tree, but I don't always find a lot of poop. Like, they say like, well, you fresh poop and old poop. Like, yeah, that would be great. That means they're going and coming back, right? I don't find that. I will find some poop. That lets me know it's good, but I know like when there's multiple types of deer hitting, I'll find especially early season, I'll find a rub. And rubs are usually, I've picked this up from some of the other guys, when you find a rub in an early season near a food source, it's usually at the turn of a trail or like the turn of a creek, like where a buck's coming up. Usually that rub is like at a junction at somewhere, right, in relation to that feed tree. But it's all those things. Like it means there's does using it, there's bucks using it, and then that was the best one I found, but I didn't get a chance to hunt it. The other one was the one I just had the really good encounter with, and I actually got some good video post hunt of what the feed sign looked like right there. And as dry as it is, and I have a camera in there, just put that out there, I have seen no hogs there. So the feed sign that I showed on camera was all deer. And it was, you could see the drip line. You could see that it wasn't rooted up, a tiller didn't go through there, right? But all the leaves under that tree were gray, turned over and gray and dusty from the dry conditions, right? And plus, when you stand there, you can hear an acorn drop probably every 30 or 45 seconds. And it wasn't just one tree, though. It was like 2 or 3 trees in there dropping.
Yeah, it was a cluster of them right there. Yep.
Yeah. And I picked them up in the video in about a 5 foot by 5 foot spot. I picked up 5 huge white oak acorns, like just in that small of a section.
Dude.
And you could see some were bitten up, some were cracked, they were eating them, but it was all dusted over from the dry conditions. And I was just like, dude, this area. And I was getting some deer on camera, cruising through. I didn't have to be like, the cameras don't catch everything, so I'm like, I don't know what's feeding just off camera 30 yards away,
Right.
But when I got in there, and I'm texting you like, dude, the acorns are dropping. Like one hit me. I text you when one hit me. I'm sitting in the stand, and I'm like, dude, this is a better feed sign spot than I found all of last year. So I was like, dude, this is the spot. And I scouted this spot like 2 years ago. I know that little grove is there, and it sets up because there's a big ditch head there. There's a bunch of blowdowns. There's some bedding close by that I know all this creates a good spot, you know?
Yep.
So, yeah, I mean, the feed sign is money, man. I mean, even when it comes to the bedding for early season, we haven't really mentioned that because, and I don't want to get on it too much because the betting is so hard to just focus on independent, like solely.
No.
It's so hard to capitalize
I like
solely
finding
on.
doe betting though. I'm not looking for buck betting. I'm looking for doe betting.
Yeah,
I look for groups of deer where groups of deer are. Bucks will follow up.
yeah. I mean, I'm hunting deer in general, typically myself.
Exactly.
There's usually a few spots that I'm trying to say, hey, I know a buck is here the first week of
But
season.
that's different in other places.
Yeah.
I'm hunting bucks in other places. Here,
Exactly,
I'm hunting deer.
exactly.
All
You
about
know,
the pressure
and I enjoy. Yeah, and I enjoy seeing deer. Like I'm hunting deer. I'm hunting deer population, right? I want the numbers, you know. But so yeah, no, that's some great points in there and about what feed sign looks like for us. I think the other important aspect, especially early season, man, you touched on some of the primary issues we're having this year. It's super dry, which couple of issues, right? There's not a lot of moisture. One of the driest Octobers I can ever think of. What does that also mean? It means it's very hard to get into your spot without making noise, right? I started questioning myself if I was getting too lazy with my access, if I was making too much noise. But especially early season, when you've got that right at the morning movement, you know, the sunrise movement, and right at the evening movement, and this changed for me years ago when I actually started paying attention to it at all. I used to just go to spots, you know. My access is planned out. I mean, 98% of the time that I go to the woods. Like, unless it's just a total whim of a hunt and I'm scouting into an area. Like, if I'm going to a place that I have intel on, I have an access plan. You know what I'm saying?
That's right.
And that means I'm approaching, and I like to move in straight lines when I access. Like, I will access a spot, I'll move straight up to a spot, and I'll get perpendicular to the tree or to the area I want to go to, and I'll turn,
Beeline.
and I'll make a beeline for it. It doesn't matter what I have to go through. I mean, it kind of does, because I do worry about noise. I think we spook a lot, you know, in flat country and big, you know, briar and pine plantations.
Stop you right there. I'm going to stop you right there, and I'm going to tell you something. And the reason why you're saying that is because least path of resistance on noise. But the problem with that is, what do deer do? Walk the least path of resistance.
Exactly.
So we're technically having to walk in on deer trails.
Yeah, you could do that every time, right? Like,
But burning the hole.
That's a risk. That's a risk reward thing, right? You don't know what you're burning.
That's right. They're burning the hole. You're burning their way in.
Yeah. So sometimes I don't care about making a little bit of noise. Hopefully it's a little bit windy. Either that, or, you know, hogs make noise, deer make noise, and if I do make something a little extra noise, I do try to move where it sounds a little more natural. And if I do make something extra pop, I stop. I just want to hear if something blows, something leaves, if something just moves off. You know, you try to do your best, right? But I do move in those straight lines. And then one thing that I this year I was like, man, I feel like I'm going to good spots. But am I getting too lazy with my access? Am I getting too confident? And then one thing I did was like, I'm making too much noise because it's too dry, and I'm wearing these rubber boots, and I don't need to. There's no point, obviously, right now. But I always like to wear those because I feel like it, you know, takes away a little bit of my ground scent. But I switched to tennis shoes because I was like, when I go into this spot, I want to be able to tiptoe.
Funny. I switched to tennis shoes this year too.
You did? I thought you mentioned that. And I was like, I need to tell him, because like I get so caught up on wearing my rubber boots that because I kind of like if I have to step over a trail or something.
It's so much easier to sneak around in sneakers.
But man, and guess what? I'm not saying, but when I went into the spot where I had the two really good hunts, was the first time I put my tennis shoes on.
See?
And I crept in. I crept in. I'm not saying, but it was also windy that morning. Unusually windy for an early morning. The wind was already like 7 to 8. But I think it just compounded, and that's what I was like. You're trying to stack those advantages. I need to create myself an advantage, right? And I think you can do that a lot with your access. Not only having a plan.
Outdoorsman created your own success there.
Yeah, that's. Yeah, and and your access is only so good for so long. No access is perfect. I went into that spot twice. I went in, sat in two different trees, and went in two different ways when the wind changed. And I knew that I was on the verge of burning that up the way as changing up the way I was going in there. But I was banking on that later movement and the ways that they were entering that area. But dude, access cannot be understated. I don't know. I mean, what are your thoughts?
If you're not, and I don't want to talk about, I'm just going to cover one in this brief because I don't want to talk about it too much. I think we need to save this one because it was a successful hunt. But you said a few things, access. That pre-scout earlier that in the season, doing all of that and knowing the food sources, like we said, knowing where the deer trails, the heavy deer trails are, scouting and putting in the miles, not the yards, the miles, around a spot and really breaking it down mentally and putting it down on Onyx or on a mapping system of some sort. That way you have something to reference back to. Because I used a few things to my advantage in a hunt recently as far as weather. The wind was technically against me. But we still utilized it to my advantage, or our advantage, to get in there and get the job done.
That's right.
We went completely around and J-hooked all of the stuff. We didn't hunt the best spots, the spots where the cameras were on. We hunted areas we knew that it's okay if we stayed off of there or got set up for a north or south wind because it was swirling real bad, that we would still have an advantage of seeing far and at least doing an observatory sit, blah, blah, blah. Same thing we just talked about, and that led into success, and that's going to be for the next time. But and it's cool because we're having this talk now, but we're going to show you how it worked out to our advantage. And I think it's an amazing story. It's awesome, and I can't wait to talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what you were doing outside of creating those conditional advantages for yourself, you were accessing strategically. Even though you were slip hunting to access a specific area.
We were not slip hunting that specific. We had our stands on our back, man. We were getting ready to slip in, and yes, we were slipping, but it was because we knew we weren't going to there. Does that make sense?
Okay, yeah.
Like, we knew we weren't going to that exact spot. We were trying to utilize the weather, the sound to muffle us, because I was with Penny, and Penny's a great hunter, don't get me wrong, for somebody being her second year ever hunting, but she still got a lot of learning on how to walk through the woods a little bit and look down and memorize her steps, for then look down another time and plan out your next 4 or 5 steps without running into limbs, picking your feet up, the things Dad yelled at you for, growing up. Pick your feet up, boy. Quit making all that noise. When you quit walking and breaking all the sticks, what are you doing? You're going stomping through these leaves, and boy, when you raised in the barn, you ever hunted before, you ain't gonna see nothing. You're scaring all the deer away. He wants to get in the tree and fart and stink up the whole place and make a noise. So, but anyways, it was basically, I knew that was gonna, if we were gonna get into a buck area, that we were going to have to do these things to get in. Bow range, quietly, effectively. And the thing is we didn't go in first thing in the morning. I waited for the storms to come. I waited for them to get there and then started our hiking. And it started raining on us about 300 yards off the road in there.
Yeah, you're right. No, I was thinking of a different time when you were like actually slipping, but I mean, but you were accessing. Yeah. But anyway, don't go into too much detail on that one. So.
Well, and I got that one with the track that I just did too, man. I mean, that was another really good slip hunt. We got to just talk about them on another one because it's a lot of really good info, and a lot of people tell you. I would have been the first one to tell you you can't slip hunt public land in East Texas. Well, I am standing myself corrected because we've made it happen more than once here within the last week. Awesome stories, awesome experiences, some of the best hunts I've ever had in my life. Just memorable, you know.
Well,
I've never seen so many deer in my life on just slip hunting ever.
Yeah.
I was just so amazed, bro. Like I just want to do it again. I can't wait to go back.
Well, and because there's a time that calls for it, right? When it's those type of areas that you struggle to get into, if you look at all of your conditions, whether that be, you know, personal, environmental, weather related, whatever it is, it's like if you pick out those, what condition is available right now that I could make my advantage, and what spot do I know of that plays into that advantage that I typically can't either get to, or it's not right to go to, or I can't push in when I know I need to. Does this advantage allow for that spot? That might make that spot better than another spot that you think is hotter. But you know what I'm saying? It elevates certain areas, get elevated under certain conditions, because if you can't access it clean, if you don't have that intel, it's not, you know, a certain spot becomes better than another. You know, it's just kind of the way, and it's hard to risk rank those things sometimes, you know, but sometimes it's worth it, you know. You're finding that specific advantage, whether it's, you know, wind, rain, post-rain, traffic. You know, it's like, well, I'm going to go in, you know, during rush hour because this spot's close to the road. I'm going to just go in when the traffic gets up instead of 3 a.m, you know. It just for specific, it's so spot specific. And you hear a lot of that, you know, a lot of things like, well, it's you know, it's situational. Well, that's true, you know. You try to tailor those specific hunts to specific spots that lend itself to your advantages, right? And that's what.
I also think that some of the biggest things. I'm sorry for cutting you off, Seth. Love you, brother. I'm good at that, ain't I? No, I just wanted to say, you know, the biggest things that I think people are listening today and future days to come, you know, is something that we're probably going to stay adamant on trying to help preach and teach is, you know, what we just covered, you know, scouting, you know, knowing the right signs when you see them, knowing like feed trees, drip lines, you know, and Seth made a very good few points on his feed trees that he found and how I find my feed trees and what I look for and I've found in my past and still find, right? But then not only that, capitalizing on knowing the route in and out of there, your access is what I mean, not just the deer coming in and out of there, capitalizing on your access. And I know, like, I don't think I really, to capitalize a little bit more, I don't really worry about my exit as much as my entry. I think because I don't plan on coming back to hunt a spot a lot of times, but if I do plan on coming back to hunt a spot, I'm going to try to come back the exact same way I came in. That way the next day I can capitalize on that.
You know, that's an interesting point you make. It's like it's kind of like in football, right? It's like every play is designed to score, right? When I go into a spot, I'm planning on, you know, I might go all in on that type of access. I'm not going in most of the time thinking like, man, I can come back here 3 or 4 times in a row. It's like, no, I'm going in here because I think this gives me the best chance to get something sideways.
Do or die, one chance opportunity. And we've even had those conversations like, hey, dude, is this the spot that you think I should go and go all guts, no glory, and all glory, or should I go in there and, you know, do an observatory stage hunt my way back? I think we've helped each other from not doing that, getting too aggressive too soon. You know? Yeah.
No, that's very true. No, some awesome points there at the end, man. Can't emphasize the scouting enough as it's specific to our area. The food sources, what it really looks like. You know, realistic, what's practical, like what is the good sign, and how to confirm it, you know, and then trying to access it. I mean, I think for those 3 things, if you take those and you implement those in the first month of the season, you will be on deer almost immediately. Now, you may not kill them, right? That's a different story. But you can get on deer pretty quick like that.
That's right.
You know, just developing a couple of rules of thumb, you know.
You know, and the whole point of us teaching you anything is to get you on deer. Can't promise you that what we're trying to tell you and teach you is going to help you, or going to kill the deer for you, but we're trying to get you in sight of deer, seeing them. And once you start seeing deer and you start figuring out, okay, this is what I did, this is what I need to do better, this is where I messed up, then that's when you start becoming a better hunter, right?
Yeah.
You take that little bit of advice that we gave you, and oh man, they were right. I saw this deer. You were so right. Everything worked out exactly like you said. And hey, man, we're not god deer hunters or anything. We just have experience, guys, and we're giving you our experiences, and we just want to see you see deer, and then eventually we'll have success stories from people listening to us, you know. And I can't wait for those days, because that's what makes me feel good. So.
Yep, and you've got to go in there and screw it up for, you know, yourself, which we still do plenty of, you know.
All the time.
Yeah.
I fail probably 6 times before I get it right. So,
yeah.
I might have 6 bad hunts before you hear about one good one. That's all I got to say.
Hey, I screwed up royally once already, so that's already been put out there when you send one flying. So what are you going to do, you know? But, no, it's good stuff, man. I'm looking forward to the next one. I think we'll go ahead and wrap it up, dude. I think we covered some good points. Hopefully everybody enjoyed the podcast. Any final thoughts?
Oh, we got some new videos coming out here pretty soon. You'll see, keep your eyes open on the Skinny Pond YouTube channel, and be looking for some of the stuff we're talking about in live action. Because we got some good stuff coming pretty soon.
Yep, some really good examples coming, and it's really hard to hold back, but it's been a hell of a 10 days or so, man. So I can't wait to get back out there too. So.
All right. Well, we got a little cool front coming in here in the next few days. It's not going to be a big one, but it's going to be down in the 50s to 70s. So a lot better than the 80s and 90s. Yeah,
I'll take anything now. I'll take a stiff breeze, you know, at this point. So.
I'll take anything I can get, man. I'm just tired of sweating.
All right, man. We'll go ahead and wrap it up. Excuse me.
Good luck, and I'll be talking to you soon.
All right, man. Appreciate everybody tuning in. Hope you enjoyed the podcast. Go check out the YouTube channel. We've got a lot of cool videos coming up. Probably a couple of kill shots coming up. Man, some really good, probably emotional hunts coming up on the channel. If you need any tracking opportunities, guys, if you need some help finding your deer, reach out to Rudy to find him directly. Instagram, Facebook, call him. I think his number's probably been put out there more times than he cares to mention. But
Texas Coast Recovery, guys. Look me up.
All right, man. Appreciate you guys stopping and joining the episode. We're going to try to get another one out real quick. We understand we've got a pause in here, but we're going to get one out pretty quick. So good luck, guys. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you on the next one.